Good morning, good evening, and good noon to everybody, no matter which part of the world you're connecting from. D365 Chan welcome you to Global BizApps Day. The tagline of our particular event is Be a Global Citizen. Let me just tell you about a brief. I'm going to take like quick 5 minutes to first introduce you to what is Chance about. You are the Chance who built this particular community where there's a cynosure in the business application space, which is Power Platform as well as Dynamics 365 in the industry, and is one of the leading business application across the globe with huge number of user base. There are many successful customer stories to tell and solutions to display and great features coming in from Microsoft all over the time. There are great set of MVPs, SMEs, and experts who are sharing it. D365 Champs is one of those mediums which has been working actively to share this across to the community for the past few years. In January, it's going to be 2 years. So let's talk about that. It is your local community. 2018, a lot of community leads of D365 Champs realized the need of a local community in Southeast Asia to start with. 10 leads in 2019 teamed up and started the first chapter in Singapore. Number of leads grew over time and went global with expansion in more countries. Today, we have members and leads in a lot of countries, including Singapore, Malaysia, South Africa, UK, US, Australia, India, Germany, and many more. We have a LinkedIn following of more than 5,000, and there's a tool from Microsoft called as Skyzala, which we utilized as our mobile medium. And today we have approximate membership of 800 over there as well. We have a lot of new initiatives coming up all over the time, and Global BizApps Day is one of the initiatives that we wanted to do, and that is the biggest initiative that we are doing as of this year. What others and who we are just techies like you, by the champs, for the champs, and with the champs. Next thing, what do we do? We have been doing Power Virtual Hours every month. We have an expert from the industry to talk about business applications, Dynamics 365, Power Platform space. We typically come on a Friday afternoon, Indian time, 12:30. This month, we have not been running one, but we have been doing this Power Virtual Hours. We have been doing Power Platform meetups as well. So in the last quarter, we finished 8 or 9 meetups across India, and we plan to do a lot more. This one is the thing which we do on every Saturday, 12:30 IST. We definitely want to do more time zones as we go forward. Initiatives empower. Here we talk about what the community can go and do to techies, and Prashant's the one who started this year, along with few other leads, and going back to universities and talking about dream careers with Microsoft technologies and platform, including, of course, our great Power Platform. It's an attempt to simulate the energy that we all carry back into the universities or our colleges. You can connect with us on social media through different set of mediums. I will not take much time from here because we are coming into our quick keynote now, which is from none other than Mr. Brian Dang, who is our keynote presenter. And I'd like to welcome Brian Dang over here. And Prashant, would you want to give a quick introduction to our great community player and Microsoft program manager, please?
Sure. First of all, welcome everyone to Global BizApps Day 2020, powered by D365 Champs. We have the privilege of having Mr. Dan here. He'll be delivering the keynote address today. He's the maker on the Power Platform and a program manager, writing stories of its community. Previously, he was a teacher making apps for classes. We will celebrate 4 years of empowering others as he walks through the history of the platform, its impact, and where it is today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brian Dang.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I am honored to be speaking on today's event. I want to make sure that you get a lot out of it. Today is a very special day. And for some of you, it's October 31st. For some of you, it's still October 30th, like me. It's a special day because it marks the 4-year anniversary of when Power Apps and Power Automate became generally available. So let's get into what my big idea for today is. Um, I will be giving you a state of the platform address. Typically, we have a State of the Union address by our world leaders. And I thought, what better way of celebrating 4 years of Power Platform than to talk about where it started, a little bit about its history, where it's going, and who it's empowered along the way. So today, think of it as a celebration of all things of that Power Platform. Now, Power Platform represents a small part of all business applications, but I figured it would be a special part for me to contribute to today's celebration. Like the other two mentioned, I was previously an elementary school teacher, and I discovered the Power Platform. It wasn't the platform at the time. There were tools like Power BI and Power Apps when I was a teacher. And learning these tools, I was able to solve some problems. In today's talk, I'm going to be weaving in some of my personal history and where the platform got its start for me. So as a school teacher, I would find all of these little problems throughout the day. Problems that you might relate to, right? How do you take a day off of work? Well, you have to leave out some plans for somebody, and writing plans takes time. So what happens to a lot of teachers, a lot of people who work jobs, is they don't take time off because they feel it's more work just to write plans than it is to take time off. And so I would create solutions inside a tool like Microsoft Excel. It let me automate all of my plans into a nice little document that I could then share with the substitute teacher who was going to be coming in the next day. So that was kind of like my first entry into solving problems using Microsoft Excel. And over time, I discovered new tools that did that much more efficiently, that did it much more easily. A tool like Power Apps let me replace the macros that I would be using inside these spreadsheets and create these buttons that navigated, went back and forth between screens, performed calculations much more easily. And so I decided I was kind of like a teacher developer. I had the knowledge of a teacher. I had the development skills of a programmer. And I thought, I'm going to take some time off to create everything I want. And then I could come back to school and share it with my fellow teachers. And we would be so much better off. So that's kind of the genesis of my Power Platform story, my little celebration for today. And it'll give you a little context of how the platform has grown from my perspective. So 3 big topics for today. We're going to look at the history of the Power Platform, how it was then and where it is now. We're going to talk about the impact that it has on all of the communities that we work with, that we engage with, communities that we can now engage with so much more easily virtually, just like we are doing exactly on this call. And then I'm going to end with what are some takeaways? What are some lessons that we get out of the growth of this platform? What do we as makers learn from the success of the Power Platform? So let's take a look at what the platform has done over these 4 years. Some big ideas. Over these 4 years, we have released so many new features into the platform. We have enabled a community to grow. We have a massive Power BI community, a massive Power Apps community, a giant Power Automate community, and a budding Power Virtual Agents community. We have individuals like yourselves, like myself, who have developed our skill sets. So we have some personal growth, but not just improving our skill sets, but improving our career trajectories. Some of us have gone off to work at other companies and received higher wages now that we have this new skill set, right? Got promotions inside our company because we learned how to solve problems using business applications. And finally, because we pick up these skills, it doesn't happen in our growth doesn't happen in isolation. We improve the organizations that we work in, right? They benefit from the value that we create in our solutions. So the very first thing that I want to share with you is a celebration of our new icons, our new identity. We released a new set of icons, and we announced these at Microsoft Ignite a couple weeks ago. The way that I'm going to narrate our history is I'm going to start off with where we are going, and then I'm actually going to walk back to how it all started. It'll all make sense by the end. So where are we headed? What direction are we going? What are our biggest investments for the upcoming year? Well, for the Power Platform, I could summarize it in 5 ways. Charles Lumana shared these 5 big ideas at Microsoft Ignite as well. So first, massive area that we're making investments in is mixed reality. Today, if you want to create some mixed reality experience, the first thing you might think of with mixed reality is the HoloLens, right? The classic mixed reality experience. But not every one of us has a HoloLens, even if we want to have one. I'm like the last one on the waiting list, and I'm eagerly waiting my turn when they'll let me buy a HoloLens. But the thing is, inside your pocket right now, right, on your desk is that cell phone. It's capable of mixed reality. And our makers are able to create mixed reality experiences. I'm not just talking about Power Apps, right? I'm talking about Power BI and some of the mixed reality experiences. But I'll get into more of that later. AI Builder and AI capabilities are available for makers like us to finally create things. I remember a time when I used somebody's tutorial on creating a simple AI to detect if something was bacon or not. But signing up for all that was so much work. Now I can work with artificial intelligence with clicks, literally clicks. I'm just training things with that skill. Area 3 that we're making huge investments in, remote work. Every single one of us spends a significant amount of time in our work in virtual meetings. Right now, all of us are on a Teams meeting to learn about business applications. So if we could make it easier for people to create experiences in Microsoft Teams, they never have to leave the Teams ecosystem. You don't have to feel the need to go somewhere else, to launch another browser, right? Everything works right in your ecosystem. Area 4 that we're making a huge investment in. We talk a lot about citizen developers learning these low-code tools, but they are not the only ones solving problems. They're not the only ones who can benefit from low-code tools. People who have been working in code all of their lives for their entire careers have a place in this community as well. We want to bring together the very best of people who work in code with citizen developers who work in low code so that our productivity as a whole can benefit from everybody's participation. And finally, category number 5 of our biggest investments is in hyper automation. So a lot of people ask me, what is the difference between Power Automate and Logic Apps, Azure Logic Apps? What is the difference? They seem so similar. And we marked a giant milestone in telling a story about Power Automate by releasing UI flows and Power Automate Desktop. It's the ability to record a set of actions on your desktop and allow an automated process to run those set of steps. So you could use legacy software. You could use your favorite software like Photoshop and automate out of it. So I just shared with you the direction that we're headed. Now let's take a look back at where did we come from? How did this all start? I like to draw our history from Microsoft Excel, actually. I remember a time when I was developing solutions inside Excel, and yet it started to hit a ceiling of limits. There's some things I just want to do inside Excel that's a little bit difficult, right? I want to make it more easy for myself to do it. And if I'm able to solve a problem on a certain platform, I want somebody else to take the same thing and run with it. And sometimes it just wasn't possible in that platform. And it's not a dig on Excel, it just wasn't the appropriate place for it. So let's take a look back at our history and where this all started. I'll start with the most mature part of a Power Platform. That's Power BI. Some of you might recall this very old logo. I still see that, sorry, very old icon. I still see this floating out there in some websites, in some blog posts. If you're still using this icon, please make sure you update it. And I'm not talking about updating it to this icon. It's changed over time to our most recent Fluent looking icon. Power BI's name, as far as I recall, has not changed. It's always been Power BI. Now, where did my start come from? I was mentioning I used Microsoft Excel, and I would create dashboards. You have this workbook in Microsoft Excel, and the very first tab or worksheet, you probably save it for a dashboard, like a at-a-glance view of all the data that you have. So me as a teacher, I showed a dashboard that parents could log into, and they could find the grades for their child. This allowed me to input grades in my spreadsheet. And then parents only had access to just that dashboard where they could look up grades. And I could surface up even more interesting things than a gradebook typically has. I could show multiplication facts, the progress that students have on their 3's times tables, their 5's times tables, and so on. I could show student progress on the reading fluency level that they have. And I could do that inside Excel. But all of this was a hacky workaround, let's be honest. It wasn't really meant for creating dashboards, or we would create them in ways that just didn't feel like it was out of the box. And this is where Power BI comes in. Today, you could create a beautiful report that looks like this, right? You have these rich controls, these charts that are not available inside Excel, right? These charts that other people can share, that you can use from the Power BI app source, right? And let me walk through just a couple of the biggest features that I feel were useful for me as somebody who does not come from a background in data analysis, right? It's not my formal training. I'm not going to talk about everything that has come out in these 4 years, but these are things that stood out to me. First, Q&A visual. I could ask a simple question using plain language inside Power BI, and then it'll generate a visual for me. It's a huge milestone for people who don't know how to use this, or it's their first experience in Power BI. They don't know where to start. So if they just double click on the canvas, they can ask a question. Next, this is a more recent addition. For that same audience of people who don't really use data all the time, they can now get a simple report on the side, a simple summary on the side of what's the data actually saying? What insights can we glean from the data that's there? And so the new Smart Narratives visual, which is currently in preview, will generate some statements about the data that's shared on a given report page. Next, now all of us work with data, but some of us work with large sets of data. I'm talking about billions of records, right? Imagine if you have 160 billion records that you work with. Well, you would have some performance considerations to think about. And Azure Synapse is a service that will take the most common, that will learn from the common queries that you have and start to cache some of it so that you get some benefits to your performance. And finally, I mentioned this a little bit earlier about mixed reality. Mixed reality isn't just something that came into Power Apps, but we want to blend more of the physical with the digital world. So here I have a picture of a gym where a manager of this gym, this gym where people work out, can place visuals, can place their reports in physical space, and they could view it from the comfort of their own device. So this is a capability that's available in mixed reality. So imagine all those kinds of scenarios right in the palm of your hand. So I shared about Power BI, the oldest member of the family. Let's talk about the youngest member of the Power Platform, Power Virtual Agents. Power Virtual Agents was announced at Microsoft Business Application Summit in 2019. It is a service. Well, I'll get into it. Today, its icon has changed. But if you're new to what Power Virtual Agents is, it is a service to create a chat bot. So if you wanted to surface up answers to people inside your organization, if you wanted to surface answers to your external customers, they could chat with a bot, and that bot can respond with answers to their questions, and their questions don't have to be perfectly asked. They could have some spelling mistakes. They could be imprecise, and the answers would still come up. So it's a chat bot that you can embed in wherever you want it to, anything that takes an iframe. So what are the biggest announcements for Power Virtual Agents? Where has it come since the Business Application Summit? Like many parts of the platform, it can now be found in Microsoft Teams. But it's not just inside Teams. With your Teams license, you can have these chatbots within your existing license. And that's significant because many of us have Microsoft Teams already. And these chatbots that people make can be surfaced up inside a team, inside a channel. So anything that you wanted to automate, like an FAQ, maybe you want to have people ask questions of, what is this team even about? Well, you can surface up those kinds of bots inside of Teams. What else? Well, I would say this is the biggest announcement. The Power Platform is and has always been an extensibility tool. What does that mean? Anything that you couldn't do out of the box in Azure, in Office, you could do it inside the Power Platform. Well, we hold that philosophy true because now you could take the very best of the Azure Bot framework into your bots. So maybe you've trained a skill in the Azure Bot framework. Well, you could bring those skills into your Power Virtual Agents. So that's the youngest member of the Power Platform community. Now let's get into the one that I hold near and dear to my heart, the one that gave me my very first start, the one that empowered me to do more. Some of you will not be familiar with this icon. It is so old. In fact, so few of us have seen it because it was only available in Power Apps when it was in beta. And Power Apps at the time did not have a space in its name. Over time, it changed to a different icon. And then it changed again to to one of the more recent icons. We renamed Power Apps to include a space which many of you were putting in anyway. And when you got so used to taking out the space or putting in the space, now you have to remember to put the space in. And this brings us to the most recent icon with the fluent kind of style to it. So where did I get my start with Power Apps? This was my very first app. It was one that I created inside the Power Apps progressive web app, the Windows 10 app. And I made it so I could teach my students cursive writing more effectively. I wanted them to be able to see an animated GIF of the letter A written in cursive writing. They could use it on a device that has inking capability. And so the GIF, the animated GIF, would replay over and over. And they could just use the inking capabilities to write on top of it and practice the letters that they need practice on. In this way, I was able to differentiate instruction. That means every student can work on what their needs are. If somebody needs more practice with the letter I, they can get that practice. Somebody needs more practice with the letter Z, they can get that practice. And I started creating more apps after that. This was an app that I made for math. I used to, so over on the left-hand side here, you see, I used to do things on paper. This is a battleship game that involves multiplication. So you couldn't just sink a battleship by calling out like B2. You have to say B2. It says 2 times 2. Well, that's 4. You have to do the multiplication in order to fire a missile. And I took that to the next level and created some multiplication games inside Power Apps. Started to see the effectiveness of it. And I thought, you know, I'm on a roll with this here. I could really create some powerful apps. And I kept going with it. Nowadays, now that I work at Microsoft, I create apps for Microsoft. It's a different kind of work, but it still has the same kind of patterns, right? You're working with tables, you're working with design, you're working with different controls that you want on the screen. And Power Apps has come a long way since I used it in beta in 2016. So let's take a look at what are some of those ways that it has grown. Functions. Maybe you're like me. You find yourself seeing that the product team has released a new function, the set function, the with function. These 5 functions are only some of the many new functions that have come about over these 4 years. In fact, these are the 5 that have caused me to go back into some of my old apps and change them, to update them, because they are game-changing, especially with. I would have to say that's probably the #1 function that has made the greatest impact. Reusable components. Power Apps comes in 2 flavors today, Canvas apps and model-driven apps, and yet they both benefit from components. For those who are not aware, components are these reusable sets of controls that you can put inside an app. You create it one time, and then you can use it on multiple screens. You can use it in multiple apps, and components can now be defined at the level of an environment. They can be defined within a solution. And the more that you can reuse content, the more that you can maintain standards inside your organization, standards for yourself, standards for your colleagues. Mixed reality. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but in a couple clicks, I kid you not, insert mixed reality measurement. 3 clicks, right? You can insert a mixed reality control inside your app. And you could use a tool like Maps. One of the highest asks that the product team has gotten is, I want maps inside my app. So there's now access to Azure Maps as a mixed reality control inside Power Apps Studio. So you can create those kinds of experiences. You can view 3D objects using existing 3D files that you have, GBL files that you have, in just a couple clicks. So this is significant because one of my first apps that I wanted to create in my free time was one to make Pokemon Go. And I did a lot of learning through that. Mixed reality is one of those features that somebody who has been coding most of their life looks at and thinks, that's unfair. That somebody could do that in a couple clicks is unfair. But AI Builder is another one of those. That is so unfair. Somebody who's been creating artificial intelligence models from the ground up would look at AI Builder and think, wow, that cuts out so many steps that I would have to do manually. The task of training an AI model is just a matter of dragging in files and clicking the different tags that define what it might be. We also made possible the ability to create portals. These are not just ordinary websites. They are websites that have the context of your data. So maybe you have a form that you want external people to fill out. Well, you could surface those kinds of external experiences on these portals. So they're not just websites. There's so much more. And this comes to my last update for Power Apps. Certainly not the last feature, but Project Oakdale comes with it many different implications. So for those unaware, Project Oakdale is the ability to build apps inside Microsoft Teams. But they're not just any apps. They have the look, they have the feel of Microsoft Teams. They will inherit dark mode. They will inherit light mode. The app template that you start with is responsive. If you enable the scale to fit option, if you turn that off, it's responsive out of the box. And so Project Oakdale is the ability to create an app that feels like Teams. And that's significant. Because if you were to tell me that I need to go somewhere else to fill out something, that causes churn and makes me feel like I don't want to do it. But if I could surface an app inside of Teams, it makes me feel like I'm not really leaving anywhere. And so that's just one part of Project Oakdale. Another significant implication of Project Oakdale is the custom connectors that you can use inside of those apps that you make in Teams. Coming soon, we will enable people to take create custom connectors in Azure API management. What does this mean? Well, if there's an API that you've always wanted to use inside of Microsoft Power Apps or Power Automate, you can use those connections, creating a custom connector one time inside, creating like an Azure function, and then you could export it to Power Apps in Project Oakdale, and then have it available for somebody else to use. This makes that union of code first makers who know how to make those custom connectors to make those connectors for low-code developers to use. So we have that harmony. We have that unity between those different kinds of developers. But let's talk about the next part and the final part of the Power Platform, Power Automate. In its very inception, it had a very lovable name that many of us still hold near and dear to our hearts, Microsoft Flow. Over time, it became Power Automate, and it lives up to its name now that we have some new features. So let's get into what are some of those new things. So my start in Power Automate was very simple as a teacher. I had very simple needs. This one thing happens, I want to find out if it happened. Did my students log in and do their practice in my apps? That's all I wanted to know. So my very first flow was getting a notification if my students opened the app. Over time, I started getting more involved with Power Automate, or Microsoft Flow at the time, where I was teaching a lesson and I wanted to know, how did my students do? Did they get it? Did they not get it? So as my students were using my apps for practice in fractions, I would have the app send me a notification on how they did. Did they score very well? Which areas in fractions did they not understand? I sent it to Wunderlist, which is now Microsoft To Do. So this was significant. Nowadays, every single one of us has flows that look like this, right? They have a lot more branching. So I've become a lot more capable in it now that I've learned some new patterns. Today, there are over 400 connectors inside Power Automate. That's huge. This is because I remember a time when it was under 200. I remember 200 being a giant milestone. For us to exceed 400 is massive. And we've enabled a community of people, of makers, to define their own connectors as well. So today, if you wanted to create a connector and submit it, you can do that. There is a process for that. Some of you have played with the new expression editor. This is available inside preview. It is not generally available yet. But this is a huge step forward from that little box that you're used to on the side. Adaptive cards are an excellent way of doing notifications. They're an excellent way of having people take action on things. So you're not just having a notification sent out that just nags somebody, but you're taking action on it. You're providing options. And the most recent announcement for Power Automate is the release of something called Power Automate Desktop. This lets you record a set of steps and then replay them as part of a flow. You can even send information with inputs and outputs. I'm going to see if, okay, I don't have it pulled up here. I was going to do a demo of it. You could open up a browser, open up a window of a software that you typically use, and you could run some automation on it. Maybe you want to send some keyboard strokes. Maybe you want to tab through a certain list, right? Maybe you want to click certain places. Maybe you want to select certain elements, certain buttons, certain windows with different names. You can do that with Power Automate Desktop. And that gives Power Automate its name. It puts the automate in Power Automate. So far, I've shared with you different parts of the platform, where it started, where we're going. I want to share with you now who has benefited from it. And I mentioned a little bit about my story. I want to talk about our community now. I want to talk about the community that you belong to. It has enabled this new kind of person called a citizen developer. This word has evolved over time, and I am so glad that our community has had conversations about it, about citizen developer. What does it actually mean? Is it an effective term? We have come to those kinds of conversations where people feel they prefer terms like low-code developer. I prefer the just hyphenating developer after your job title. So I was a teacher. When I learned how to use the platform, I became a teacher developer. Maybe you're an accountant. If you learn how to use the Power Platform, you become an accountant developer, right? One of the funniest things about our community is they are so modest. You often hear them say, I'm not a developer, even though they make apps, they make automation, they make reports, they make flows, right? We're all developers, whether we want to accept that title or not. So don't be ashamed. But we do need a word to describe some of us who have accumulated that new skill, right? That's this new app development skill. And so through these conversations that our community has had about separating people who work in code primarily with people who work with no-code tools, low-code tools, bringing them together has resulted in the hashtag ProCode, NoCode, Unite. And we did not come up with this as a product team. Our community has come up with this, right? They saw a need to unite these platforms. And it's because not just low-code developers benefit from the Power Platform, but people who work in code primarily also benefit from the platform. And that's where Fusion development teams were born. It's the idea of bringing together both of those audiences, people who work with code primarily, people who work with low-code tools. The more that you can find the greatest strengths from those two, the more productivity you get as an organization, right? You don't want to exclude somebody from problem solving just because they use a different skill set. So this idea of Fusion development teams is the path to greater productivity for organizations moving forward. And our community has exceeded our expectations. They have come up with new hashtags to describe the way they feel when they create something. Right now, it is Friday afternoon. Friday afternoon for me means it's time to make something. Friday afternoon to me means it's time to learn something, crawl down a rabbit hole of learning. And every time that I want to geek out with somebody, I go to the Power Addicts hashtag, I go to the FlowFam hashtag, I go to the Bot Squad hashtag. These are our communities of practice, right? They allow us to geek out, and they even create spaces for us to geek out. So some of you may have been on the Power Addicts calls, the hangouts that they have on a monthly basis. This is a great place to enjoy the company of others who love to make things just like you do. Our community has grown a certain group of champions. Champions are these people inside organizations who are driving change, who are increasing their skill set so they can bring value back to their company. And they have enabled their companies to reap so much value by solving problems. Easy problems, low-hanging fruit problems that finally need to be solved because they can learn how to do it. And I'm excited to talk about a couple more stories here. Foyen Olajide Bello has learned how to create apps at Sterling Bank. And when she did, she didn't just stop there. She taught somebody else inside her organization. And she didn't just stop there. She started a user group in Lagos, Nigeria. First, it started out as many people from her organization. And then earlier this year, at the Global Power Platform Bootcamp, the Lagos, Nigeria user group started trending on Twitter. They filled an entire auditorium of people who wanted to learn how to make apps, who wanted to make flows. And she didn't just stop there. She kept going and created a new group for women called Tech Stylers. What I love about our community is they learn something wonderful, and they know the value of that skill, and they know that if somebody else can learn it, they're going to get great value themselves. And so they want to share the same skill that has benefited them. It's such a selfless community that we belong to. We've also enabled several different organizations around the world to benefit from the platform, including near and dear to where I live, King County. Brittany Carter had shared a dashboard on Start Dev Change about how they are tracking vehicle registration. When they look at data in Power BI, they're able to learn information from it. In this case, they found that the differences in preferences on whether to renew a vehicle by mail, by online, by in person did not change very much, but the satisfaction of completing online registration had been high, very high. It became accepted as much easier in this data. At Manitou Park Elementary, Lauren Taylor was an assistant principal who is now a principal at Manitou Park Elementary, who learned how to create apps. And after my talk it's going to be Eric Suave, who had helped to create an app for managing something as basic as the bus scheduling, right? I love the work that Lauren has done. I love that she has wanted to solve these problems that have been lingering inside education, right? You spot something inefficient, immediately your thought should be solve it with an app or a flow. And most recently, we released a story about the city of Kobe over in Japan, who uses Power Virtual Agents to answer questions about the coronavirus. If you want to field questions about the coronavirus, you want a single source of truth. So they created a bot on Power Virtual Agents to answer these frequently asked questions, to surface these quick answers so that people could be more informed. And at Schlumberger, Alan Chai from our community has shown us how the platform can find its maximum output. Over at Schlumberger, where Alan Chai is from, they have over 5,000 makers. So let me put that into perspective. What does that mean? I know what I'm able to achieve by solving problems with making apps and flows, right? I know what I can achieve. If I take my ability and multiply it one time, multiply it by 2, I know that's huge on its own. But if I could multiply it by 5,000 or just any number, all of a sudden the value of every single employee in an organization multiplies the value of the organization overall. So there is so much to be said about what digital transformation looks like in the next 5 years. So now I want to take a moment and share what are some takeaways that we should have from how the Power Platform has grown, how it's become a platform, who it's empowered. So let's take a look at some of these lessons. And I describe it as a power within. These takeaways that I'm about to share, I want you to internalize them. I want you to adopt them by next Monday. Think about them over this weekend, and then implement some part of it by Monday, or else you won't do anything, right? You come to these events, you need to have a takeaway. Takeaway number one, as a product group, we have learned that as we listen more to our customers, we don't have to guess about what do we need to put inside the product to take it to the next level. We can find those answers from the community itself by listening to you, by reaching out to MVPs, pulling some into our conversations, by reaching out to members of the community on the forums, asking for elaboration on ideas, getting some more details. By listening to you, we have things like components inside of Power Apps. We have things like a larger expression editor inside Power Automate, right? Those things don't just come from nothing. It's from you. So never doubt that the details that you share, the things that are on your wish list that you communicate, never doubt that you are out there helping us make these products better. Takeaway number two, the early bird gets the worm. This means we as makers, the sooner we get involved in solving problems, the sooner we start getting value. And it's compounded, right? If you wait 3 months later to make an app that gives you $3,000 of value, you just missed out on that much every single month, right? Every single month. More of us can get involved in development when the tools for problem solving have a lower barrier of entry. We're developing these low-code, no-code tools so that more of us can get involved. It's a message of inclusion. And this event, this global BizApps event, is possible because more people around the world can get involved. Just think about that for a second, right? Who do you see presenting these sessions? It's a much more diverse population, right? Just look at Start Dev Change, look at Power Platform Community Conference. These events are possible because we're reaching a wider audience of people who can get involved. Takeaway number four, by bringing in more people to solve problems, more problems can be solved. There are so many problems on the horizon that everybody has on their backlog. They can't solve it on their own. They can't rely on one group of people inside the organization to solve it. You got to involve more people. The only way to do that is if the tools for solving those problems have less of a curve for learning, have less of a learning curve. And finally, takeaway number five, before I pause and give us all a break before the next session, is the community of makers that we belong to. When we feel empowered, we feel the need to share that same power with other people. It's my example, it's my experience. When I started on the forums, asking questions, how do I do this? How do I do that? And some stranger across the internet decided to answer my question, I was able to learn. And because I was able to learn, I felt that when I saw this other question, I thought, I know the answer to that. I can help somebody. And we have such a giving community that I'm so proud of being a part of it. So through this journey, I want to thank the organizers of this event. I want to thank everybody who joined this call. I want to thank everybody who has joined events in the past. I look forward to all of the sessions for today. I do want to leave some time for you to take a break before the next session, and or we can take some questions right now. So thank you for joining us on today's event. I'll hand it back to Prashant and the others.
Thank you, Brian, for the wonderful keynote. And we are really excited to celebrate 4 years of Power Platform alongside you. Just a small thing before we go. So
yeah,
D365 Champs wanted to launch a new logo today. And originally we were thinking to do it via Originally we were thinking to do it via PowerPoint deck, but then I decided last night why not do it through a Canvas app. So we are going to launch it through a Canvas app, right? And that's a way to celebrate power as well. So I'm just going to share my screen over here, and we are going to launch our new logo for the for the D365 Champs community in your presence, in your gracious presence. So is it okay if I take over the screen really quick?
Take over. Go for it.
It's not that great an app, but I was just trying to use it low code thing to unveil something else. So here is the little app. So this is with our is a tablet app, and all I did is used one button. And yeah, I used to be a tech developer, but this is a low code way of doing it. If I had to do it via tech mode, I would have to write a lot more. So all we are doing is I'm just clicking this button, and that's our new logo. So it's all about power of the community and getting people together and getting people up to speed and growing together with the awesome
and uplifting
technology
each other.
and taking each other together. So thank you for having that one. Yeah, it's a small one, but that's the way we wanted to try it. And it's exactly what Power Platform Impact is, right? So we can make a app as easy as making a PowerPoint today.
Yeah. I like the message that comes across in that logo. It tells me we lift each other up, right? The saying of the power addicts, we rise by uplifting others.
Right.
Oh, that is so beautiful.
Right. Thanks a lot, Brian, and thanks others. And now, if anybody has questions,
Sorry, I just wanted to say thank you to Brian as well. It was really, really good. My favorite takeaway was takeaway number 4. I'm just saying.
thanks a lot, Brian, and same here. I will. I'm gonna go back and look at those takeaways and a lot of learning, especially with the impact of Power Platform worldwide. And your own journey is so inspirational. Thanks a lot for taking the keynote with us and inspiring us all over again, celebrating 4 years of Power Platform.
I don't see any questions at this stage, but I do saw a few messages praising Brian, and they were really appreciating Brian's journey from the school to Microsoft role. So that's all I can see. Everybody is so appreciative of this session and the takeaways.
Yeah, one thing I forgot. There is a takeaway number 6 that I did not put in here. Is my story? It seems like it's unique today, but it's so not unique, right? We have people who have transformed their careers, like Matt Devaney, right? He was an accountant making apps, and now he's made it his full-time job, right? Me becoming an app maker is going to be so normal moving forward. It's like, that's not special. It's not.
But it's like you are the reality of citizen dev, how it came in picture, if you think about it.
So my job, I feel like my job, I will find success when my story will become so common that it's boring.
Yeah, great way of telling it. It's very inspirational and definitely shows the impact of Power Platform for, originally used to be just Power BI to so much power, and we are increasing it day by day. So great to see that. And yeah, if it reflects back in a lot more stories and we can also empower a few, we'll be more than happy. Thank you, Brian, for your great session and inspiration that you have created for us today.
And happy birthday to Power Apps and Power Automate for 4 years.
Happy birthday to Power Apps and Power Automate as well.
I'll just stop the recording so we can start the another one. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.